I'm going to make some spring rolls or egg rolls. I had a Chinese neighbor lady, friend, years ago, and she taught me how to make these. So my family's been bugging me to get these going again. So I've got my deep fryer out for Oli Bolin the other day, so I might as well do my egg rolls. In the egg rolls, this is just going to be a vegetable one. We're going to have our carrots, cabbage, bean sprouts is going to be the inside. There are different variations that you can do where you can add pork or mushroom or bamboo shoots and stuff. There's different things you can put in here. This is a very nice simple one, very delicious as well. So this package here that I've got for my spring rolls, I found them at Save On Foods. Usually they are in the produce section. If you're in the produce section and you kind of go where they have some of the Chinese vegetables and the cabbage and stuff, that's usually where you'll find them. That's where you'll find like your dumpling wrappers and your wonton wrappers. And these are the egg roll wrappers or spring rolls. This one is actually spring roll. There are different ones you can get out there. This is about probably an 8-inch one or so. You don't want to have, if they're too small and it's a different type of a pastry, it's not, this one is nice and crispy when you bite into it when it's deep fried. And they're super thin. Like when we peel them off, you'll see later, it's like pulling off paper. They're so thin. And that's what makes a really nice wonton wrapper. And I believe there's 25 in a pack. I'm going to double check that because over the years I find packaging has changed with a lot of things where they've made things smaller. So I will double check that. But this recipe that I'm going to give you should make about 50 egg rolls or spring rolls. And then the seasoning that goes in there is actually some salt, some chicken base, and a little bit of sugar. So I will get all of this prepared. I'll show you what each of the vegetables and everything should look like when they're chopped up and what we have to do for each stage before we have to wrap all of our egg rolls. Alright, so for my cabbage, I just have a small cabbage. This one I measured, it's only about 5.5 inches across. I've cut it in half. I've removed the core on the one side here, and I've cut it in a half again, so I've got quarters. And you want to cut this just really nice and thin. You want really nice thin strips of cabbage. You don't want big chunks inside your spring rolls. You want all the really loose, thin vegetables. I'm going to slice up my whole head of cabbage here, and then I'm going to boil it. This is actually the only vegetable that we cook ahead of time, because you want your cabbage to make sure that's cooked before you actually put them in the deep fryer. So the carrots and the sprouts we don't have to cook ahead of time because those will cook as they deep fry, but the cabbage we do cook ahead of time, and we also need to remove all the moisture after we've boiled it, and we're going to drain it in a towel. We're going to actually squeeze the excess water out. So first though, I'm going to get this all sliced up very thin, get it in my pot and boiling, and I will show you what that looks like once I've got all that cut up and boiling. So I'm going to get that boiling. I only need to boil it for a few minutes. You just need to soften them a little bit. I've rinsed off my bean sprouts and I'm letting them drain, and I'll probably also put those in a towel to make sure I have any excess water off of them. And my carrots I've peeled, and if you start on the fatter end of your carrot, you'll need about 4 bigger carrots, or 4, if they're a bit smaller carrots, maybe use 6 carrots. I think I have 5 here because a couple of mine were a bit smaller. And if you cut them on a little bit of an angle with your grater, and use a little bit of a larger grater, so you just want to have nice little strips of carrot. Okay, you don't want the really, really fine grating. You do want this medium grate. And if you do your carrot on a bit of an angle, that's when you're going to get them a little bit longer. Because you do want all these vegetables to be long and stringy. It's just the way the Chinese like to chop up their vegetables. So I'm going to get these chopped up, those dried off, and I'm going to get these boiling for a couple minutes, and then I'll show you what we're doing next. Alright, so I just got my bean sprouts in a towel here. I'm just getting some of the excess moisture out of them. We're going to get all our vegetables into a big pot. And I got my carrots that I've all chopped up. And my cabbage, so I boiled, it actually wasn't boiling, the water was boiling, I put it in, the water temperature went down, but it was in there for about 5 minutes or so. You just need it to be softened up a little bit. They're still a little bit crisp, that's perfect. I drained it and I rinsed it out with colder water because I didn't want it to be too hot anymore. I have some of the excess draining out. And I'm going to also put this in a towel and I'm going to press out a lot of the extra water. You don't want to have all that excess water. If your vegetables are too wet, then your wrappers get wet and then it creates holes in the wrappers. So I'll probably need a second towel here. I'm going to squeeze out a lot of the extra moisture in here and I'm going to get that mixed in with this. So I'll just do that in a minute and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so the cabbage is quite wet, so I've got my second towel on here. You just want to get as much moisture out of there as you can, and even if that means you got to roll it up and squeeze some of that moisture out, you just don't want to have that excess moisture in there. So we're just going to dry this as much as we can here, and then we're going to mix it in with our other vegetables. I think I actually want to flip it because it's all, this one's really wet now. And that's better. So we're going to get these mixed in with our other veggies. And then we're going to add in our seasonings. So I'll just get this mixed up a minute and then I'll show you what seasonings we put in there. Alright, so I've got my cabbage, carrots, and bean sprouts all mixed up here. You want to make sure that's mixed fairly evenly because you don't want to have an egg roll that only has cabbage in it. And we're going to add in our spices. I have 1.5 teaspoons or half a tablespoon of sugar, half a tablespoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of chicken base. I've just got the little packages. 3 of these would be a tablespoon. So all this salt from your chicken base and the salt, now the recipe actually originally called for more. I think it was a tablespoon of salt, but I'm cutting back. We like to cut back on our salt a bit. So the salt in here is going to actually draw moisture out of our vegetables. So you want to mix this all in. You want that seasoning to get mixed in there. And you'll be able to feel that it's going through. You can feel all the gritty and the seasoning going through. So you want to get this mixed in. And then before we put them in our wraps, I'm going to take half of this out and put it in another colander or sieve because the salts are going to draw the moisture out and I don't want all of this to sit in the water. So if I put it in here, it'll drip out, so that keeps our vegetables drier. So I'm going to get half of that in there and then we'll get out our first package of wraps and we're going to start wrapping our egg rolls. I'll show you how thin these wrappers are. They're so thin, just be gentle. Pull off a layer. Just make sure you keep this covered. You don't want this to dry out in between. We're going to get a nice bunch of vegetables in the center here. Get your triangle or your square on an angle here. Going to roll over to the center and pull it back. So you want those vegetables to be in there nice and tight. Going to roll it up about halfway. Fold over one side, then the other side. And I like to make sure these angles are fairly straight, and even if that means you got some sticking out over here, that's okay because that's going to get wrapped up as we roll it up. I have a little bit of flour and water paste here that I've made, and you just need that on the tip, and that is what's going to hold it shut. And you want to get these in a Ziploc bag right away because you're going to want to freeze these. If you freeze them, then you can take them out anytime and you can thaw them and deep fry them or deep fry them right away. But the best way to store them would be in a bag. This is so thin, I think I got 2. Hang on. I know I have 2 here, but it's so hard to see where the edge is. So just make sure you're getting 1 at a time. There we go. Fill out your wrap. Make sure your counter doesn't get too wet in between. A nice bunch of vegetables. We're going to roll over, pull it tight, roll it up about halfway, pull in on the side, and this side, roll it up, a little bit of a flour water paste there, and you want to get these into your bag right away so they don't unroll. So a little close up, so you just get a nice portion size in there. I'm going to roll this over, pull it back so it's a little bit tight, go up about halfway, fold it up on the one side and the other side so you have a nice straight envelope. And don't worry if it's a little bit uneven here because that's going to get tucked inside. A little dab in your flour water mixture here to get that paste on the end. Roll it up And put this seam side down so it doesn't unroll in your bag. My first package had 26 in it, so they still have around 25 in a pack, so that's good. I had originally divided about half of my insides over here because I wanted to make sure I didn't use too much, because I do want to be able to make 50. I have a little bit extra, but that's fine. So now I know I have enough for my next 25 here, because I did do it about in half. So we're going to get rolling on the other 25, and then I'll show you how to cook these up. So I've got my deep fryer up to 350 degrees, and I'm just going to get about 6 in at a time is what fits in mine. And I've been doing about 3 minutes per side, seems to be pretty good. So get my timer on for 3 minutes, and we'll take a look at those, and we're going to flip them after 3 minutes because you want them golden on both sides. All right, I'm just going to flip, and they tend to want to flip back, so they can be a little bit tricky for flipping. 3 minutes minimum, because these are still a little light, maybe 3 to 4 minutes per side is what you'll need, depending on how hot your deep fryer actually is. So make sure they're all staying in the right direction. Another 3 minutes. All right, 3 minutes aside, and you'll want to get them onto some paper towel to get some of the excess oil off. And serve these with some sweet and sour sauce. Delicious. I just got to listen to this nice crunch. Oh, delicious. Look at that. Load it inside with your veggies. Dip it into your sweet and sour sauce. And there's the recipe.